Hey guys, so in the last video you saw, we got the car running. I was kind of scared because I didn't know if we had good oil pressure or not. So when all that happened, I just went ahead and I ordered these gauges and now they are finally here. So let me explain what these are. I got a total of 3 gauges and each gauge does 2 things. That's why I like these gauges. So I found out about these gauges from one of my favorite YouTubers, Trevor from Motion Auto TV. I think Adam LZ uses them too. These gauges are from Innovate Motorsports and they're really nice. I wouldn't say they're like on AEM's level, but they're still pretty good. Okay guys, I just about got all the wires ran in the car, but before I do, I want to go over everything. So we have our solenoid controller / AFR gauge, which is a boost controller and air fuel gauge. And then this one is an oil temperature and pressure gauge. And then this one is a water temp and battery voltage gauge. So there's 6 total functions on these gauges. And as you can see, all these freaking wires, hopefully I can get them inside of my car. But I had already plumbed everything in the car. I'm about to go show you right now. But here's the things that I didn't plumb because I have to pull the engine out first. So for oil pressure and oil temperature, I just have the sandwich plate for now. I heard these weren't the best to get a pressure and temperature source from, but it will work. So we're gonna put on this oil sandwich plate in a minute. And then for water temperature, we are going to put this in the side of the block. I'll show you where. I have an adapter, 1/8 MPT to 3/8 MPT. So we have those. So that's oil pressure, oil temperature, water temperature. Now let's go outside and see what I did. What's going on inside the car for now. As you guys can see, I did pull my glove box out and I did pull under the dash out over here. I kind of made a mess, but I wanted to wire everything really like discreetly and low key. And you know, since the whole idea of this is a clean street build, I wanted to do all the wires cleanly so you can barely see anything. So let's go over first things first. How am I going to power these gauges? As you see right here, I got a red wire and a brown and black wire. The brown and black indicates a ground, the red indicates power, switched power. So I was wondering where I was going to get a power from because I didn't just want to run a wire all the way from the battery, and I figured it out. When I pulled my glove box out, I was looking at this wire right here. This is the glove box light, and I was like, I wonder if this is a switched power. It is a switched power, which means when you turn the key to the ignition position, it gives the positive power. So as you can see, I cut the positive and the negative from the glove box light, and I extended the wires right here, and now I'm just repurposing them for the gauges. I figured I don't need a glove box light. There's also this right here, which powers that little OEM BMW flashlight that you plug in. This is constant power, so I didn't want to use constant power, so I'm just going to put this back and it's just going to work fine. But as for my glove box light, it will be no longer, but that's okay, no big deal. So yeah, that's my powers. And then I have everything brought over here and they are ready to plug into the back of the gauges. So we have a boost map. So this is a map sensor for the boost gauge. And then right here I have oil pressure. So this is to the oil pressure gauge. This says MAC valve, so this goes to the boost controller. This right here says water temp, so this is going to go to the temp gauge in the side of the block. Oil temperature, and then last but not least, upside down wideband. So everything is right here ready to be plugged into the back of the gauges. I tried to push all the wires back there, that way I have enough room to push the gauges in there. And my gauge bezel is on the way. It should be here hopefully within the next day or two, and I'll show you guys that. And okay, so each sensor goes to different sides of the vehicle. So the sensors that went to this side, I went ahead and ran them through this side of the car, and the sensors that came from this side, I ran them to this side. So let me show you real quick what we got going on. Let's see if you can see what I'm doing here. As you can see right here, this is where the main battery cable goes to the battery post in your engine bay. So what I had done was I snaked 2 wires through here, which was the, I'll show you outside, which was the wideband sensor. And where's it at? How did I lose it already? oh, duh, the MAC valve. So the reason why I did these two over here is because the wideband is going to go right there inside of the exhaust, and this MAC valve is going to be plumbed in to the turbo, which is right here. And then let me show you the ones on the other side. So this is the 4-bar map sensor with the vacuum line that's supposed to tee into your manifold, so that's why I have it over here. And then the 3 gauges, water temp, oil temp, and oil pressure. These 3 are right here because they're going to be plumbed to the sandwich plate, and then the water temp is going to come out of the side of the block. So that's these 4 over here, and then those 2 over there. But let me show you how I did this, because it kind of took a long time and it was really a pain in the butt. So what I had done was I had undone this fuse box, and you can pull this up, and as you can see, well, maybe not, there is like a through hole for some factory wiring. I just kind of cut that open and I shared it with these 4 wires. These 4 wires go into the fuse box, and then through the fuse box they go inside the car. Now this was a real pain in the ass because it took a long time, but as you can see, there are knockouts on this box. Man, it's kind of tough to see. There are knockouts on this box that you could just punch out. See this one right there, right next to my finger? You can punch those out and you can feed wires to them. So as you can see, I got all my wires shoved through this knockout. And then I'm going to tuck them up under the dash all nicely. And then they go straight into my center console. So that is how I wired my gauges. So once the main gauge bezel gets in, I will put all the gauges in there and wire everything up, and it should be ready. But for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the engine out, so that way I can put the oil sandwich plate on, and we're also going to be plumbing the heater core. So we have to get this engine out. It should be really easy to pull out. All the bolts are just super loose, so all I gotta do is hook up a cherry picker to it and yank it right out. So let's hook that cherry picker up and let's get it out of here. I'm not gonna lie guys, for the heater core, it was actually quite complicated to figure out, only because since I want everything to work like factory, the heater core was going to be a pain, because the BMWs have heater valves which only flow coolant through the heater core when you have the heater on. Toyotas, they're not that way. Toyotas flow through all the time. So on BMWs, if you would have it flow through all the time, your air conditioning wouldn't work, because the heat and the air will be blowing at the same time, and it just completely defeats the purpose of the cold air conditioning. So we had to figure something out here. And let me show you what I got. I got a bunch of fittings from Amazon. I kind of rigged up together. There's a T, there's a 5/8 barb to -10, and then there's a -10U bend, and then there's a -10 over here that goes to some AN line that I don't have hooked up yet. And then right here, I have a 3/8 MPT to -10 to 5/8 push lock barb. And then right now, I did order like 4 of these, but only 1 came. I'm still waiting for the other ones. Here is the heater core. Now this isn't like any other heater core, mainly compared to Toyotas, because Toyotas are awesome and BMWs suck. This is a dual climate control heater core that doesn't even work, but I want to plumb it up just the way I had it because it worked fine. Both sides are technically supposed to have their own climate control, driver and passenger, but it never really worked for me. But I'm just going to plumb it the same way because I know that it will function, not properly, but it will function. So there is 3 ports here, 1, 2, and 3. So I believe there's like 2 parts of the heater core. This goes to one side, this goes to the other side, and then this is the outlet. So there's 2 inlets and 1 outlet. So the inlet to the heater core is right here on the bottom of this. Is called the heater control valve. So these valves open and close as you turn the heater on for each side of the car. Now, these differ from Toyota because Toyota always has coolant running through the heater cores, and it doesn't affect it when you turn the air on or anything like that. So if you deleted these valves and you just had coolant going through the heater core at all times, you won't be able to use your air conditioning because the cold air will just surpass the hot air, and then it won't be cold anymore, it'll be warm. So you need these valves in order to keep the coolant from going through the heater core. So like I said, here's the inlet. So hot water comes out of the side of the engine and supplies this, and then they go through here, whatever, and then it returns to the water pump from here. So I was like, okay, well, this is where it sits from the factory. The 1JZ sits too far back because, as you know, the BMW motors are tilted, so there's plenty of room right here. But the Toyota motor sits right in the way of this, so we need to relocate this and we need to run new lines. Now, I will put a picture right here to show how tight everything is back here. So we are going to need to cut these down. As you can see, there's a lot of room that goes, see back here, that's where they go into the actual car. So there's a lot of room here. So we are going to cut this off. There's a little lip right here. We're going to cut it right at the lip, and we're going to slide the hose past the lip, and we're going to use the lip as a stop. That's where we're going to put our clamps. That way they can't pop off. So we're going to do that for all three of these. And we have completely different line we're going to use. We're going to use 390s that are going to go straight down, and then we're going to take this on the E36 6-cylinder. I think they're mounted like over here, which wouldn't be bad, but it's just a really tight fit over here because of like the whole engine mount. So I would like to put it here. So we are going to plumb everything up, and we are going to figure out where we need to put this valve. Now, let me show you what's going on the back of the engine. So there's three places that coolant comes out of this engine, okay? So coolant comes out right here in the back of the head, and this is hot coolant. So it's already cooled down the motor, and it's going back to the water pump. So there's one port right here, and then you see where that plug is right above the oil filter right there. That is a 3/8. That is where the factory oil cooler went. So that is where coolant comes out, goes through the oil cooler and cools down the oil. So we went ahead and got rid of that and plugged it. And then the one up here that I'm gonna put my temp sensor in, that is a 3/8 MPT plug as well. So what we're going to have to do is we are going to use this as a supply to the heater core. So I got some fittings right here. I got a 3/8 MPT to -1090. So we're gonna take that and we're gonna thread it in there. And it should allow us to run a heater line to supply that heater control valve. So it goes in, supplies the valve, supplies the heater core, and then it comes out of that left port. Now it comes out of that left port, we need to suck it back to the water pump. So this is the pipe that sucks all the coolant back to the water pump. So since we had it simplified because we deleted all of those coolant ports up there, I have this 130-degree fitting going right here, and it's going to wrap around the back of the motor. It is going to, I'm gonna have a -10 line going right here, and then I have a T, and then I have a 180. So this is what I had to do to have the coolant still flow properly. Like I said, Toyotas, they flow through the heater core at all times. So this on a Toyota goes into the heater core, but on a BMW, you can't put this into the heater core because it stops the flow of coolant if the heater's not on. So what I have right here, there's a 180 and there's a bypass. It goes right through there. And then what I have right here, this is a 5/8 to -10. This is a T right here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the new outlet of the heater core, I'm going to plumb it right here. That way when I turn on the heater, it will take the coolant from the side of the block, which is plugged anyway, so it doesn't matter if the valve is closed when I'm not using the heater. So we're going to take the coolant from the side of the block, go through the heater core, and return through here. So if the heater is not on, we can still return the coolant from the back of the head, because they say if you block this port off, you'll get a hot spot in the back of your engine, and then that's how you overheat the 5th and 6th piston. So we don't want to do that. We want everything to flow naturally. So not only are we going to bypass this, but we also gonna have this so that way our heater will work when it is on. This ended up being like $130 worth of AN fittings, but since it's behind the motor and you're never gonna be able to get to it, I do not want to have a problem with this. That's why I'm using all of this AN line and fittings. But from the side of the block, I'll be able to get to it, so I'm just going to be using a rubber hose just for simplicity. Okay, here is the oil filter on the 1JZ with the Suspicious Garage oil cooler delete stud. So it allows you to put the oil filter right on the block. But what I'm going to put in now is this, I think it's a Blox. Yeah, it's a Blox sandwich plate. So it has a gasket. By the way, shout out to Chris, he just freaking gave this to me. He didn't need it anymore. So it has a gasket, so the gasket goes in here and it presses up against the block. And then you put this on the oil cooler delete stud and it allows you to sandwich this plate in there, and then you just thread the filter onto here, and then your gauges you can put in here. So I was looking at it, it looks like the best place to angle this is aiming down. That way the sensors are pointing down like this, so that will allow me to add my oil pressure and oil temperature sensors. Okay guys, so we were working on taking this off to get the sandwich put on there, but we ran into a problem. There's no oil. No oil at all going through the filter housing area, and that worries me a little bit because we've started this motor, I don't know, maybe 5-6 times. You know, we ran it for probably less than 10 seconds each time, but still, there's no oil going through the motor every time we ran the motor. So I'm a little nervous. Hopefully we didn't damage anything. So now our main priority is just to get oil going through this motor. So we need to prime the pump. Hopefully we can do that and we did not damage the motor. Fingers crossed. Okay guys, a little stressful, but the engine now hopefully has oil pressure. I'm going to check it one more time. I got the filter on, I got the sandwich plate on. As you can see, I got the two sensors on the sandwich plate. The one on the right is oil pressure, the one on the left is oil temperature. So I think I'm pretty good. I'm just going to spin the starter. You see how I have it rigged up? I have a wire right here, the blue one, as the starter solenoid power, and I just have the edge of the wire, I just tap it on the battery, and then I'm just using the harness that powers the starter to power starter, and then I just got a ground hooked up to the intake manifold. So this is basically how you would crank an engine with it not in the car. And what I've been doing to gauge this is I have this bottle, Mountain Dew bottle, and I have the oil, the turbo supply line undone in the water bottle, and it's pumping out oil. So you know it has oil pressure because when I put the filter on for the first time after I primed the oil pump, there was nothing coming out of there. It was kind of like bubbles and stuff like that, and then once the oil started circulating through the motor, it started spitting out oil. So the way I did this is I looked online. They said you can do this, but it's not very safe to do. And what you do is you put oil in the galley manually, and I just used like a little pump threaded onto a bottle. I did it, and then you turn the motor backwards, spin the oil pump backwards, and it sucks the oil. So I basically just did that. I turned the motor backwards, I don't know, maybe 6 revolutions, and it should prime the pump backwards, spitting oil out of the pickup into the pan. And then once you do that, then pretty much the whole line is primed. Because if it's not primed, I think what the pump was doing was basically just cavitating when it was spinning over, because there was air in there and it couldn't get suction. Once it was able to get suction, it was taking the motor, bringing it up through the strainer, through the pump, sending it through the oil filter, and then dispersing it throughout the motor. So I'm pretty sure I'm good here. I'm just going to give it one more crank. I'm going to put the camera on the water bottle so you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. You're not going to see a lot, but you're just pretty much going to see the water bottle start to fill up. Actually, yeah, you can see the what's it called right there. So I'll just hold the camera there, and I will put the starter on. We should be good. Here we go. So as you can see, it burbled and spit out some air for a little bit, so I guess there's still air in the system. But we now have oil, hopefully, going through the motor. Now I don't have to worry as much about cranking this sucker over. So I do have the spark plugs out, just so the motor can crank easier and faster. And now it looks like we have oil pressure, but to be extra sure, before I even try to start this motor, I'm gonna plug in my oil pressure gauge and make sure that we have the proper amount of oil pressure. Okay, so here's the plan of attack for this. We have the 3/8 MPT plug that we pulled out. Shout out to Efren, thanks for tapping that for me. Now we have this 3/8 MPT to 1/8 MPT adapter. So we're gonna thread that in there first. That way we make sure this is tight. And it is a 21mm socket, but before we do that, we're gonna go ahead and put some tape on it, just to make sure we got a good seal. Once we thread that in there, we're going to take this, and we have a ratcheting wrench here, and it is a 14mm, so we're gonna try our best to get the ratcheting wrench somewhere in there between the VVTi supply line. We have to take this little bracket off. This is for the power steering, just so we can get the wrench in there, and hopefully we can snug it up and get it tight enough to where it doesn't leak, because if it does, it's gonna be a pain in the ass to get back there. Up next, remove this 3/8 MPT plug, put in our 3/8 MPT 2-10 adapter, and then after that we will thread on our -10 90 to 5/8 barb, and then hopefully we can start messing with the heater system. Okay, up next is this line right here. This is power steering line. Now I got this from Excessive Manufacturing. It is for an E36 2JZ. So instead of just getting something made or hacking something up, I figured I would just get this. It was so cheap. I think it was like 60, 70 bucks. So it comes with this line right here. I think it's 18 inches long, and it comes with two fittings. There's this one fitting right here. This is for the rack, and then another fitting has a crush washer, and it threads right to your power steering pump. So as you guys can see, there's a straight end and a 90. So the straight end goes right here, and the 90 goes on the power steering rack. So let's go do that right now. So on the power steering rack, there's two lines right here. One of them is high pressure and one of them is just low pressure. So this one we're not going to be messing with. We're just probably going to modify it slightly. As for this one right here, we're going to take it off and get rid of it. We do not need this one anymore because we have our new fitting that we're going to be putting in. So looks like it is a 19mm, so we're just gonna go ahead and take this off. Hopefully we don't make a mess. Actually, just in case we do, we've been making a lot of messes lately, so gotta try to be a little bit nicer. So this is 19. So we just take this off. Remember, there's crush washers on both sides. Be careful when you pull the plastic cap off, because not only does it have a crush washer, but it has a rubber O-ring. So you're gonna take this, thread it right into the steering rack. And there's no real torque spec on this, but you know crush washers, tight is tight. So we are going to tighten this up before it feels like it's about to break, and then that should be good enough. Anyways, power steering line is pretty simple, so we're just gonna go ahead and call that done for now. And here is my list of things to do just off the top of my head that I need to do. Some of them will only take 5 minutes, some of them will take, 45 minutes, an hour, but let's see, we got the sandwich plate in, we got the sensors in, we got the gauges in, but they're not complete yet. Tighten water pipe, I did do that. Run heater lines, all this is done. Trans fluid, I gotta add a little bit more in there. Throttle body bolts, I need the top bolts, quick and easy. Vacuum lines, Mac valve, fuel pressure regulator, and booster. Those should be pretty easy. Tap trans vent, I have the trans vent, I just have to drill and tap it. Weld engine plates, I don't know if I'm gonna do that. Trim shifter hole should be a couple minutes. Close harness. I think we're almost done with that. Power steering lines and reservoir. I kind of got the reservoir where I want it. We'll see what happens with that. Throttle cable, I got to put the new one on. Intercooler piping, radiator install, clean map. I don't know. There's a lot. So for now, that is the list we're going to be working on when we pull this engine out. Hopefully, we can get this thing back in by the end of the day, and hopefully we can actually start plumbing everything, like the power steering, and then we can hook up the alternator cable, stuff like that. And as you guys can see, this is kind of where I have my power steering reservoir mounted. The only problem is, as you can see, it's lower than here. It's not a big deal, but we're going to have to take a hose and maybe come out, go down, and then come back around and go under, because I don't really want to put this any higher. It's already pretty high. They do sell fittings, like 90-degree fittings, but they're like $60. That'll bring it down here, and then all I got to do is kind of do this. So we'll see. If I can't get it to work with this and have a line go like that, then I guess we're gonna have to order that $60 fitting, but we'll see. First things first, I grabbed this transmission vent. It's a factory GM transmission vent. The only thing is, it did not come threaded. It was like more of like a push-in type of deal. So what I did is I found the closest size metric tap that fit over it. I tapped it to an M10 by 1.25. And then what I did was, it's kind of tough to find where there's kind of like a good spot to put a vent here. It's kind of hard here because you move this side to side, and I didn't want to hit the vent or anything. So I decided to put it right here. I went ahead and put it in gear, and we have all this room here to put a transmission vent. So what I had done is I kind of just set it next to here like this, and it looks like our transmission vent should be perfectly right here, like in the middle, where it won't be bothering anything. That way we can get a good vent, and it's like not like right above this or anything. So I also went ahead and drilled this out with an 11/32 bit, and I tapped this to M10 by 1.25, and I threaded this in there, and then all the excess I cut off. So when we get this threaded in there, it is going to look like this. And then we're going to slide this back on, and hopefully that should not be in the way of anything, and it gives it room to breathe, because on my tripod housing, it had one of these built into it. Since I took it off, it's no longer there. So that's what we did for that, and it should not be in the way, and it looks like it has plenty of room to breathe. So what we're going to do is we're probably just going to put some maybe some thread tape on here and some thread sealant, so we can put this back on and torque it down for the final time, and then we can move on to our next little project. Okay guys, up next is the throttle cable. So as you can see, I got two lined up right next to each other. The top is one custom one that I bought off of someone that was parting out their JZ E36 build, and then the one on the bottom is the stock 318 throttle cable. So if you look at them, it almost looks like you can just use the stock one. And at the time I didn't know that, but I heard that the 4-cylinder throttle cables do work on the JZs, but at the time I didn't know that. So the custom one is just, I don't know, maybe a ½ inch longer, and the threads are almost pretty much in the same area. I'm pretty sure that we can modify that to make that work easily. And then where they go into the firewall, this one has a few washers just in case you want to, I guess, adjust something. And then where you can see they hook up to the throttle pedal, pretty much the same. This one's a pin and a clip, and then this one's just like a pop-in. For now, we're going to throw this custom one in there, and for now we're just going to split the washers in half. We're going to put 2 on this side and 2 on the back side. So we're going to have to take off the nut and these few washers. We're going to have to take off these, just thread them off, stick it through the firewall, and then thread them back on from the other side. Shouldn't be too hard. Okay, I got the engine back in. I got everything hooked up except for the main relay and the fuel pump relay. That way we have no fuel and no spark and none of that. So we are in here in the car. I got the battery plugged in, I got the ignition on, I only have one gauge wired up right now, just kind of jankily. And I want to see if I can crank the car and get oil pressure. So let's crank it. There we go. Come on, baby. Okay, we got 25 pounds of oil pressure. Let's plug this shit in and let's get this puppy fired up. See if we get better oil pressure. Well guys, couldn't be more excited that the 1J runs and it sounds good. It doesn't really sound like I damaged anything, but only time will tell. So cross our fingers on that one. What we're gonna do now is we're gonna fire up the car and see if it holds coolant. So what I had done was I already kind of bled the system as much as I can with the engine off. I got the pretty much the self bleeder or the auto bleeder, whatever you call it, right here. And the main reason why I'm doing this is because I want to make sure that there is no leaks, because if there's leaks back there by the heater core, I have to pull the engine out again. So pretty much everything that is necessary for the engine to run is connected. Computers hooked up, all the basic electricals hooked up. I got my gauges hooked up just because I'm going to run this thing up to temp, enough for the thermostat to open, and then I'm going to see if I can bleed some more coolant. Or right now I just have water in here, but I'll eventually put coolant in there, because if it leaks, coolant is a mess. So let me show you what I got here. I just kind of put the basic stuff in here. I barely threaded in the shifter just so oil doesn't start splashing around. I got the gauges kind of just temporarily hooked up. You see, if you turn the key on, as you can see, everything's reading. I just turned on the key. I cycled the fuel pump. I'm gonna check for leaks real quick, because I don't know, I'm not sure if I tighten this bung all the way here. No wetness. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to fire it up and I'm just going to let it run for as long as I feel comfortable, basically. If the thermostat doesn't open, it's okay. I just want it to start circulating coolant as much as it can. But yeah, I'm a little nervous, guys, but we're going to fire this thing up. Hopefully everything goes okay, because I literally do not have the motivation to pull everything apart again. So hopefully it's all good. That way I can kind of button it up. Hell yeah. Getting a little hot. Luckily, it doesn't look like we're leaking any coolant. So that's cool. That means I really don't have to pull the motor out again, and we could start bolting things up. You know, finally putting the bolts in the motor mount, snugging them up, finally putting the trans cross member and mount on, and we can start putting things away. But before I do that, I want to start the motor, let it run, get it to temp one more time. Today was a long day. I've been at this all day, and I plan on being at it all day tomorrow. Tomorrow, if everything is good, we're going to put in the drive shaft, and shit, I don't know, maybe we'll just move it back and forth a few times.